Assalamu alaikum. I hope everyone listening is doing well. Welcome to your favorite channel, Elegadabi. Today's episode is very interesting and full of mystery. I hope you enjoy it. This story is something you won't forget easily, and I'm sure you'll love it. If you have your own stories to share, feel free to send them to me. The details on how to submit a story are in the description. Now, sit back and listen carefully. Imagine yourself in the story as I take you through this mysterious tale. Today's story comes from India, Hyderabad, and it's about a haunted place called Kundan Bagh House. Many ghost hunters and bloggers have explored this house, and there are a lot of videos on YouTube about it, but the story I'm going to share today is a bit different. It's from a rickshaw driver who had a scary experience near this house. Let me tell you his story. It was a cold, rainy night, and the rickshaw driver was looking for passengers. At night, he picked up someone and headed toward Kundan Bagh. But what happened during that ride turned into a terrifying and unforgettable experience for him. Before I continue with his story, let's first talk a little about the history of Kundan Bagh House. This house is located in Hyderabad, India, and it's known as one of the most haunted places in the area. Many people have stopped going near it because of the strange stories they've heard. But there's more to the stories. A man named Ramadara Kiyoshi was one of the last to leave the house. The house once belonged to a wealthy man named Vashishta Narayan Singh, who lived there with his family. But one day, something strange happened. The family suddenly disappeared without a trace. No one knew where they went, and since then, the house has been abandoned. One day, a thief named Sajid decided to break into the house. He had been passing by the house often and thought it was a good place to steal valuables since no one lived there. Late one night, Sajid entered the house, hoping to find expensive items. He started searching the ground floor but didn't find anything valuable, so he decided to go upstairs. As soon as he entered one of the rooms upstairs, he was shocked to see 3 dead bodies lying on the bed. The bodies were rotten, and there was a terrible smell in the room. The smell was so bad that Sajid couldn't handle it anymore, so he ran out of the house in fear. After seeing the dead bodies in the house, Sajid was terrified. He thought to himself, if I leave quietly and don't tell anyone, people might think I'm the one who committed this murder. He decided the best thing to do was to go straight to the police station and report what he had seen. Sajid told the police that he was a thief who broke into the house to steal, but instead found 3 dead bodies inside. However, instead of believing him, the police arrested him on the spot. They said, you must be making this story up. You're the murderer. Sajid tried to explain, why would I come to you if I was the killer? I'm telling you the truth. But the police didn't believe him and took him along with their team to the house to verify his story. When the police arrived at Kundan Bagh House, they were shocked to see that Sajid was telling the truth. There really were 3 rotting dead bodies inside the house, and the smell was unbearable. It was so bad that even the police had a hard time entering the house. They called the forensic team, who arrived to collect evidence and take the bodies for investigation. The police assumed the murders had happened 2 or 3 days earlier and thought Sajid was lying to cover up his crime. But when the forensic report came, it shocked everyone. The report showed that the bodies weren't 2 or 3 days old. They were 2.5 to 3 months old. This incident took place in June 2002, and it became one of the most mysterious cases in Hyderabad. The story doesn't end there. During the investigation, the police also found black magic items inside the house. There were strange objects, spells, and ritual tools that suggested someone had been practicing dark magic in the house. The bodies had no visible injuries, but the forensic team found poison in their systems. The first cause of death was mysterious, and no one knew who was behind it. Now let's move to the rickshaw driver's story. His name was Ganesh, and he shared his chilling experience near Kundan Bagh House. Ganesh says, it was a very cold night, and I was looking for passengers. Winter nights are slow for business because people go home early and the streets become empty. He had recently bought a new rickshaw after losing his job as a peon at a school where he used to earn 1,000 rupees per month. The life was tough, but driving a rickshaw was helping him earn a decent living. One night, while searching for a passenger, Ganesh passed by Kundan Bagh. It was a quiet, deserted road, and he was about to turn back when he saw someone waving at him from the side of the road. Ganesh slowed down and stopped his rickshaw. At first, he thought it was a woman, but as he got closer, he realized it wasn't a woman. It was a Kwajasara, a transgender person. The person approached him and said, I need to go to Kundan Bagh. Ganesh looked into their eyes, and something about the gaze felt strange. But without saying much, Ganesh agreed to take them. But little did he know that this ride would turn into a nightmare. Banisha says, I asked her directly, where do you want to go? I didn't want to waste time because I'm a daily WAG worker. I make money for each ride, so I need to keep moving. The Khwaja Sara, transgender person, didn't answer immediately. She stood there in silence, just staring at me. She was wearing a red sari with a white scarf draped around her shoulders. She had flower garlands in her hands, and I noticed a sweet smell coming from them. Around her neck, she wore various lockets and jewelry. Ganesh thought to himself, how did she afford all this jewelry? These people don't usually have much money. After a long silence, Ganesh said, if you're not going to talk, I'll leave. Just as he was about to start his rickshaw, she suddenly spoke. Wait, no, don't go. I need a ride to Kundanbog. I haven't been feeling well lately, and I need to go there. Hearing the name Kundanbog surprised Ganesh. Very few people ever talked about that place. It had a dark reputation. And this says, at that time, I didn't know much about the haunted house in Kundanbog. The incident I shared with you earlier, the one about the dead bodies, happened in 2002, but this ride took place in 2005. By then, many people already knew the house's story, but I didn't know all the details. He explained that he didn't own a mobile phone back then, and news would spread by word of mouth. I wasn't very social, so I didn't hear much about what was happening around me. I was busy driving my rickshaw, trying to make a living. Still, something about this Khwaja Sara made him curious. Ganesha asked her, how much will you pay me for the ride? She surprised him by saying, whatever you ask for, I'll pay. Ganesh was shocked. Usually people like her try to bargain or pay less because they don't have much money, but she was willing to pay any amount. That made me wonder why she was so eager to go to Kundanbog. Ganesh thought for a moment and then said to himself, well, I'm out here looking for passengers to make money. I'll take her where she wants to go. The Khwaja Sara got into the rickshaw and Ganesh started driving toward Kundanbog. Ganesh says, on the way to Kundanbog, she started singing strange songs in a soft voice behind me. It wasn't in Hindi, and I couldn't understand the language. It sounded like some old Persian or Baluchi song. The way she sang was strange, like she was humming in a trance. But then something even stranger happened. Ganesh says, her voice started changing. At first she sang like a woman, but then it started sounding like a man's voice. It was as if two voices were coming from one person. I slowed down my rickshaw and asked, why are you doing this? Why are you changing your voice like that? Are you trying to scare me? She didn't answer right away. After a few moments, in a deep old man's voice, she said, just keep driving, don't stop. Ganesh says, when I heard that voice, I got goosebumps. It didn't sound human. One moment she sounded like a woman then a man, and now like an old man scolding me. The way she spoke felt commanding and scary. The night was cold, and the road was deserted. Suddenly the wind picked up, and light rain started falling. The wind was so strong that dust flew into my eyes, making it hard to see. I had to stop my rickshaw to clean my face. I took out the water bottle from the rickshaw and started washing my face. My eyes were burning from the dust. I covered my face with my shirt sleeve to wipe the dirt off. After cleaning his face, he turned around to check on the passenger. Ganesh says she was sitting completely still, like a statue. It was strange. The wind and dust had covered me in dirt, but she looked perfectly clean. There was no mud on her face, no dust on her clothes. It was like the wind didn't even touch her. This terrified Ganesh. I was shaken inside. How was this possible? Is she really a Khwaja Sara, or is she pretending? Is she someone dangerous who roams at night to commit crimes? Ganesh says, I just wanted to drop her at Kundanbog and get away from her as fast as I could. But we weren't there yet. As we got closer, the rain started getting heavier and the cold became unbearable. Finally, they reached near Kundanbog house. She said, will you wait for me? I'll be back in a minute. Ganesh watched her as she got out of the rickshaw and walked toward the wall of the house. Ganesh says she stood near the wall and suddenly started vomiting. But it wasn't normal vomiting. She was vomiting continuously and it looked like water pouring out of her mouth. I couldn't understand what was happening. He got more and more scared. Ganesh, I couldn't see where the liquid was coming from. It just kept flowing out of her mouth like a stream of water. Ganesh says, at first, I thought maybe she had come from a party and drank too much, but then I realized she didn't look drunk at all. There was no smell of alcohol from her mouth, and her behavior wasn't like someone who's drunk. I've seen drunk people before, they stumble and smell of alcohol, but she seemed completely normal. except for the weird vomiting. Ganesh continues, I took the water bottle from my rickshaw and ran toward her. I told her, "Here, take this water. Wash your face. Are you okay? You're vomiting too much." But she just looked at me and smiled. Her smile was creepy. And when she smiled, her face looked like two faces merged into one. Ganesh was terrified. It was like I was seeing another face inside her face. I got so scared that I shouted at her, "Why are you laughing? What's wrong with you?" She didn't say anything. She just held her sari tightly and bent down a little. Then something even more horrifying happened. Ganesh says, when she lifted her sari a little, I saw her feet, and that's when my whole body froze. Her feet were upside down. Ganesh explains, her left foot was on the right side, and her right foot was on the left side, and the toes were twisted inward, facing each other. It was like both her feet were backward. He continues, I was so shocked that I left my rickshaw and started to run away. But as I ran a few steps, I fell down, my whole body felt weak, I couldn't move properly, and then, before I could get up, I saw her running toward me. Ganesh says, she ran into the Kundan Bagh house and I thought she was gone, but within seconds she appeared behind me. Suddenly, she jumped on my back and pushed me to the ground. She sat on my waist and started choking me with her hands. She was pulling my collar and laughing loudly. Her laugh was so scary that I thought I was going to faint. Ganesh was struggling to breathe. I couldn't tolerate her feet, the way her twisted feet were. It was something I had never seen in my life. Her left foot on the right and the right foot on the left, it was unnatural. And she was pulling my neck, choking me harder. Her laugh kept getting louder and louder. Ganesh says, I passed out. I don't know how long I was unconscious, but when I opened my eyes, it was morning, almost the time of Fajr, dawn prayers. There were people around me. Some people were going to work, others to the bakery. I woke up on the road, and my rickshaw was parked near Kundan Bagh house. The crowd was worried about him. Ganesh says, I was taken to the hospital, and I was told I had a high fever. I stayed sick at home for a week, but even after all that, I couldn't forget what had happened. That creepy Khwaja Sara, her feet, her voice, it all felt so real. Even now, Ganesh shivers as he remembers her last words. Ganesh says, when she was choking me, she kept screaming something in anger, but I couldn't understand what she was saying. It sounded like a curse. To this day, I can never forget that night. The unforgettable ride to Kundan Bagh, Ganesh recalls, when I asked her why she wanted to go to Kundan Bagh, she suddenly snapped at me. Her voice became cold and stern. She said, I live in Kundan Bagh. What does it matter to you? I go there every day, drive your rickshaw, and don't ask questions. Her words sent a shiver down his spine. Ganesh continues, I thought to myself, maybe it's just a normal person. Maybe I'm overthinking everything, but something about her felt off. Her presence, her changing voice, and the way she looked at me. It was like she knew something I didn't. Despite his fear, Ganesh kept driving. But the silence in the rickshaw grew unbearable. The desolate road, the howling wind, and the strange passenger made it feel like the night would never end. Suddenly, she broke the silence again. Sometimes, people want to forget certain things, but life doesn't let them, she said cryptically. Her words felt like a warning, or perhaps a curse. Ganesh says, I didn't know what she meant by that. But one thing I knew for sure. This was the strangest encounter of my life. There's a mystery I'll never solve. He pauses, his voice trembling as he recalls the incident. To this day, I don't know who she really was. Was she a witch? Was she a female genie? Or was she something else entirely, a spirit tied to Kundan Bagh? Ganesh remains haunted by that night. All I know is that she sat in my rickshaw, took me through that cold, eerie night, and when we reached Kundan Bagh, she disappeared into the darkness. But before she left, she attacked me. She grabbed my collar, and I felt her hands tightening around my neck. Her grip was so strong that I thought I wouldn't survive. But then, I blacked out. When Ganesh woke up, he found himself on the road, surrounded by curious onlookers. His rickshaw was still parked near Kundan Bagh. His body was weak, his mind dazed. They took me to the hospital. I had a high fever for days. I was sick and terrified, unable to process what had happened, Ganesh says. Even now, the memory of that twisted figure and her upside-down feet haunts him. Ganesh concludes, no matter how much time passes, I'll never be able to forget that night. That strange woman, or whatever she was, left an unforgettable mark on my life. It was a journey I wish I had never taken. And so, The legend of Kundan Bog continues to live on, spreading fear and mystery across those who hear it. And that comes full circle.